Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to Networking Thursday. It's February 9th, 2023. For those in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, it's a bright, sunshiny day. We're very glad you're with us this afternoon. Please note this event has been recorded. It's currently live on Facebook. The recording will be on the Career DFW Facebook page and the Career USA YouTube channel for others to view in the future. By participating in this event, you give consent for your name and picture to appear. Please note that any comments you put in the Zoom chat window will not appear in the recording. For those people on Zoom, if you have any questions throughout the presentation, please just put them in the chat window. Also, this is all about networking. So put your name, contact information, what you're looking for, a couple target companies, because you never know who else is on the call who may be able to help you in your job search. For those watching on Facebook, thank you for being with us. If you have any questions throughout the presentation, just put them into the comment field, and I am monitoring that feed, and we'll be sure to get those questions answered for you. Well, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Jeff Morris. Back in 2008, I started a website called careerdfw.org, a website to help those who are unemployed in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. In 2012, I started a second website, careerusa.org, to help those around the United States. I have written a book called What I've Learned About Your Job Search You May Not Know. It is available on Amazon, or if you see me in person, I sell it to people cheaper than what you can buy through Amazon, so that Amazon didn't get the extra. Since 2007, I've been facilitating and leading the North Dallas Plano Career Focus Group. The group's been around since the late 1990s. I took it over in 2007, and we've got a really good program coming up tomorrow morning, and I'll tell you about that at the end of this session. And since 2017, I've been a member of the practice interview team. Remember, your LinkedIn profile and your resume don't get you a job. What they do get you is a phone call. How well you practice your interviewing skills, that's what's going to get you your next phone call. So feel free to reach out to dallaspickery.com. You get more information on how you can sign up for a totally free interview. Well, every session we have a different speaker talking about networking. We've had 24 different speakers, I think, and we're going back and we're replaying some of the best we've had over the last couple of years. Today, our speaker is VandeMotter. He's an executive recruiter at LinkedIn Executive Search. He's a retained search consultant, meaning that he goes and he is hired by a company to go find a candidate, and he's the only person looking for that particular candidate. His presentation today is on networking, CEO, coach, and friend. This is pre-recorded. It's about an hour long. If you have any questions, we'll get those answered for you at the very end of the session. So feel free to just put your questions in there. And I think he's got a couple of handouts, or at least one handout that I'm aware of, and I'll be sure to put that in the chat window. And for those watching on Facebook, I'll give you an email address where you can email me, and we will get that document to you.
Jeff, I am honored to be here as always to try to help anybody that's going through the transition in their life. And so I appreciate the introduction and the opportunity. I tell everybody this meeting is not about me, it's about you all. So if any of you that are on this call have any questions about job search outside of even the box of networking, or questions you've always wanted to ask a retained search executive, don't hesitate to ask or raise your hand and we'll get to you immediately. This is not about me, it's about you. And so if I could talk about myself all day and what we do and how we do it, but really I want to help answer your questions. So make sure you raise your hand if you've got anything, and it doesn't even have to be on subject. If you've got something, throw it up there. Jeff helps me manage that link so that we get to those questions quickly. Jeff, what I think I'm going to do, I pulled up an old presentation. I'm going to share my screen. If I can figure out how to do that. Hang on just a second. I do have a few slides that I think will help create or will help provide some additional information. Now, where is my share screen tab? Hey, where are you? Stop recording breakout rooms. Good Lord. Well, it is not showing up. recording, remove spotlight. Where is it?
It should be right in two. If you saw breakout rooms, it should be two to the left.
Well, duh, it was there. Thanks, Jeff. How's this work? Okay, so I think that these are some slides I put together a while back. So there's, we'll update them as we go, but so we'll talk about some reasons to network. But first and foremost, let me just, again, because I think it's always helpful for everybody that's in this room to talk about the difference between the different kinds of recruiters that you might come in touch with. So Jeff alluded to the fact that I'm a retained search executive. There are three kinds of search executives. There's internal recruiters, there's contingent recruiters, and there's retained recruiters. And the difference is that internal recruiters, they work for the company, they work for companies, they recruit for that organization, and they get paid a salary to work for that organization. Contingent recruiters get paid only if they provide the candidate that the company hires. So a company can hire 3 contingent recruiters to find a vice president of marketing, but the only one that gets paid, the only person that ever gets paid in the process is the recruiting firm or the organization, the recruiter that brings the candidate that they hire. On a retained search, so there's no exclusivity. On a retained, there's exclusivity, and I get paid a fee up front. I work collaboratively with the organization to fill the role. And so the fees are a little bit higher on the retained search, contingent right in the middle, and then obviously for working for a company. That's only helpful so that you know how to ask and what questions you might talk to with different recruiters. If you're dealing with a recruiter, it's critical that when you first get the phone call that you gain a quick understanding as far as what kind of recruiter they are. Are you talking to an internal recruiter, somebody that works for the company, or are you working with an external recruiter? And understanding that will just give you better information about how to communicate with that person. So make sure you don't hesitate to ask that question. The ultimate goal, though, I tell people that your network is your net worth. Your network is your net worth. So, there's a lot of different reasons that you might network. You might do it for just career net researching to see what's out in the market. You might be going through a job search. Most of you on this call are in that category. But you might know that as a known number that's out in the marketplace, somewhere in the category of 57% of the people that are actively working, they are working for companies, are actively looking for a new job. So the talent pool today is just a crazy market. It's more crazy than it's ever been. I can't even, obviously I've only done this for 15 years, but I've never seen anything like it. And then career development, meaning that you're trying to learn more about maybe what a specific company is looking for in their skills or their employees, or if you want to move to the next level. So there's a number of reasons that we would network. But your network is your net worth. So let's turn it into job search real quick. And one of the first things I encourage candidates to do when I find out that they're actively looking for a new opportunity is that they activate their network. Okay. And what does that mean? That means to me that you make a list, and this is an important list, that you put it into an Excel spreadsheet or some kind of tracking tool that you might have. And I want you to make a list of everybody that you've worked with, worked for, people that you have called on if you were sales, people that have called on you if you didn't have an outside sales role, maybe people that were calling on you to sell you products, people that you met at conventions, people that you met on airplanes. Some of you might have a Rolodex or a box of business cards that you've gathered over the last few years. I encourage you to pull that out, and that is your network. And when I say activate your network, what I want you to do is I want you to actively pick up the phone and try to call every one of those people. So you may have 100 people on that list, you may have 500 people, but on that Excel spreadsheet, you've got their name, You got their email address and you got their phone number. But I want you to start with a phone call to each one of those people. And the call goes like this. Hey, Jack, I appreciate your valuable time, but I just wanted to give you an update on what's going on in my career. I'm actively looking for some new opportunities. And I just wanted to be on your radar because you've always been a trusted advisor. And I want to make sure that if something comes across your desk that might be a fit for something that I'd like to do, that possibly you think of me. So that's not a voice message. That's a conversation that you're having with this person. If you can't talk to that person after you've tried a couple of times, then yeah, leave a voicemail. But the obvious reason is we want to have a conversation just to learn what's going on, answer their questions. Yeah, when you were with me, you were doing this and this and this. Have you gotten any experience doing that? And so it could be an active, it can be an active conversation, or it might just be a very short conversation. And the person says, gosh, thanks. I'm glad to hear from you. I'm sorry what you're going through, but I'll continue to think of opportunities that might be a fit. Make sure in that phone call that you take the opportunity to do what every time you call into an IVR anymore, make sure you update your database so that you've got their name, you make sure you've got their right email address, whether that's a personal email address or one that they're working from. I prefer for you to gather personal email addresses, because as people change jobs, that database tends to be a little bit more stable. So make sure you validate you've got the right email address and your phone number. You might ask, hey, just fun fact, I'm gathering birth dates too. You might put a birth date in there if that's appropriate. But the key is you gather all that information, because you're going to make one phone call to them in the first month. And then after you've activated your network, then we've got to figure out a way to keep that network warm. And so if they don't hear from you in 30 days or 40 days, then they're going to start to assume. And we never want anybody to assume when we're going through a job search. You've heard all that before. You know what assume means. It makes an ASS out of you and me. And so we don't want anybody to assume. So you can't possibly, you've made these phone calls to these folks. It took you a month. It took you 6 weeks. I don't care. You're going to be making a lot of phone calls every day. But after you've done that work, that heavy lifting, now we can automate that. And the best way to automate that is to come up with a way that you develop a marketing newsletter for yourself. I teach one process that's called the prayer letter. And you all have gotten the prayer letter before. It reads like this. You've reached this prayer, or you've opened this prayer, and please read it 10 times, send it to 10 people in the next 10 minutes, or you're going to die and go to hell. Well, in a job search, we don't want to send that note out, but what we do want to send a note out every month that says something like this in the subject: great people know great people. Now, first, let's talk about where you put these email addresses. If you've got 1,000, then you're going to have to break it into a couple of lists, might break it into 4 lists. But if you've got 100, you can do that in one email. You take all those email addresses that you put into that Excel spreadsheet and you put them into a BCC. You do not have to have a 2, and you do not have to have a CC. And the reason is when everybody starts hitting reply all accidentally, that your network's not getting bombarded by emails from people they don't know. So make sure you put them all into a BCC, and then the subject says great people know great people. If you didn't know I was up to these days, you wouldn't be able to help. I'm in a job search, as we talked about. Now, you might say, we talked 30 days ago, so as you know, I'm actively looking. But something that's an opening sentence that reminds them that you're actively looking for a new job. Some of the target companies that I'm looking at this month include, and you give them 4 or 5 companies that you're talking to or that you'd like to talk to. You'd like an introduction. You're looking for that network introduction. So if you or anybody in your network has contacts with people in these companies or companies like these, I'd greatly appreciate an introduction. Feel free to forward this note on to anybody in your network. And if there's anything that I can do for you or anybody in your network, don't ever hesitate to call. I'll be back in touch in 30 days. So once you've queued that email up, it only takes about 3 minutes every month to send that out, or every 6 weeks. But don't hesitate. Don't stop after the first month or the third month if you don't feel like you're getting traction, because this process takes generally about 3 or 4 months. and then the network just starts to explode on you because you have continued to lean in on people, and the time you call them that wasn't appropriate, they didn't know of anything, but because you continue to remind them, you continue to be in their inbox, they now do have somebody that they want to introduce you to. So you might consider this a really aggressive search tool, but this is a differentiator, and not many people use a tool like this, and it doesn't cost you anything. It's just time. So that's the first major piece of what I think is the reason to networking for people in this room. Jeff, do we have any questions? Nope.
Not yet. No.
Okay. So effective networking, you should be networking all the time. Okay. Now, many of you that are on this call say, you know, gosh, I get so busy and I was traveling, and I get that. Okay. There's no question about that. We all become too busy. But right now, while you're looking for a job, you've got to be out there networking every day. I encourage people, you know, I understand we're coming out of COVID, and I'm not trying to put anybody in a proposition or a situation that's uncomfortable, but we are back to work. We are back having coffee, and people are out visiting face to face. If that's within your vernacular and you feel comfortable with that, then during your job search, if you're spending more than about 5%, 10% of your time sitting behind your computer looking for jobs, you're wasting your time. Okay. 80% of your search, 90% of your search should be out there talking to people, networking, making phone calls, and just doing everything that you can. And the reason that number is so disproportionate is because I'm putting it right into perspective of the number of people that get their jobs from job boards or from the internet. And that number is somewhere, it used to be 3%, it might be 4 or 5% now just because of the COVID situation, but it's not 50% of the people. And so you've got to proportionally align your schedule with the activities that are going to get you the closest to the end zone. And networking is the key in getting out and away from the computer. Now, that doesn't mean I'm not opposed to somebody sitting in front of their computer and using LinkedIn and making contacts and making phone calls. I don't consider that a bad use of your time. But if you're trying to get a job in Dallas and you're trying to reach out to those people, do that work at night when you know when you can't be at a Starbucks meeting with somebody, and try to use those awakening hours to meet and get out and see as many people as you possibly can. You know, so what are the goals? I have exchange information, support. You want to be there for them as much as they're there for you. So, you know, when people call me today, they want to get together and have coffee, they want to network with me, you know, they've got one thing in mind and one thing in mind only, and that is that they are actively looking for a job and they want to know who I know and who or what I might be able to provide them as a tool. And that's great. But I always turn around and ask them that, hey, if you are given the opportunity to hire, or you know somebody that's hiring and they'd use an outside recruiter, help me build my network as well. So we do that simultaneously to make connections. But it's, I want you to make sure that you go broad. That's one of the bullets here, but I want you to go broad and go deep. And that's why taking the time to put together that Excel spreadsheet, looking through your databases, looking through your LinkedIn connections. I don't care where people live. If they're in your network, they're a valuable asset to you, because just because they live in Chicago doesn't mean that they have a job, that they can't have a job in Dallas and they're really well connected down here. That builds to another point, Jeff, that I often bring up in conversations like that. And that is that as you go through this job search, I want every one of you to remember one thing, and that is do not, to keep the blinders off and don't assume anything. Okay. So keep the blinders off, because we just never know where the next lead is going to come from. Okay. We just never know what and how that phone might ring. I'll give you a small story. I got a phone call the other day from a client of mine that I haven't worked with in a number of years. They're doing business with somebody I used to work with, and they went exclusively to that side of the business. And so I occasionally lean in on this executive and, hey, how you doing? How's the family? But I got a random call, and the conversation I wasn't expecting at all was, hey, we've got a new job that we want you to fill, and I know we haven't worked with you in 3 or 4 years, but would you come back and help us out? So I'm throwing that lead out to you because everybody that's on this call, I just sent Jeff the job brief, but I'm looking for a new manager of culture and diversity, people management, HR executive in the Dallas area. It's got a nice brand, an amazing brand that goes with it. And it's great opportunity for somebody that really knows HR and wants to be associated with a lot of very fun projects. As I talked to the leader of HR today for this particular company, they're really doing some things that are really state of the art, cutting edge, transformational things that they're doing with an organization. There's only about 55, 60 employees in the company, but they're all white collar. So it's a very highly compensated, highly titled organization. So if anybody on the call meets those responsibilities or has that experience or knows somebody, help me network and spread the word. The thing with networking is that you just have to keep the blinders off, because you might think that there's somebody in an organization that you want to try to reach, but they're too senior or they're too junior or they're too this or they're too that. And you are all in sales mode right now. I tell a story that when I was in college, the professor would hand me a pen and he'd say, sell me the pen. And so, I'd get up in front of the class, I'd say, hey class, this is a really great pen. It's got a really nice color to it. We've inbred it. We've put your logo on there for you. It's clean. It fits in your pocket. It doesn't mess. It doesn't have a leak at the bottom of it. It's easy to use. You just click. And it's really nice in my hands. It's easy to write with. I really enjoy this pen. Well, you are the pen now. And so as you go out to network, you've got to identify what the key attributes are of your brand. And you've got to be able to sell that brand and communicate that brand very quickly to people. This comes back to the elevator pitch. We talk about that. I know everybody on the call's heard about that before, but if you don't have an elevator pitch, by the time you put your head on the pillow tonight, I want you to make sure you check that box. Because as you go out and start this recruiting, when somebody says, so tell me, remind me, John, about what you do and who you are, you'll have a tendency to just start talking. And because you haven't talked to anybody in a while, you might talk too much, talk way too much. And by that time, the person you're talking to's got their phone in their hand. You can't see it, but they're down here. And they are looking at movies to take their wife to, or figuring out where they're going to go to dinner, or trying to plan their next destination that they want to take their family on vacation. So opening up your conversations with an elevator pitch and a very well thought out presentation of who you are is absolutely critical. Before you start making these calls, before you activate your network, make sure you've got that elevator pitch, and you can tell somebody real quickly, very distinctly, who you are and what you do. If you don't feel confident with that, I want you to find somebody in your network that will be honest with you. Call Jeff, send it to Jeff, send it to me. What do you think? Is this strong? Is this too wordy? But having an elevator pitch is very, very important as you initiate your networking goals and objectives. And just being able to communicate that very quickly to somebody is going to you're going to use it over and over and over again. Okay. So, this is old data. I mean, this is like generations old now, but it does go back to what I talked about earlier. And that is that I think that it says 2008 NBC reported. I think if you were to go to 2019, that number is probably even higher than that today, because of the emphasis that people put on networking and communicating with people. People want to go to work where their friends are at. They want to go to work where they feel safe. Somebody asked me the other day, what's driving all this discern in the market? And is it the people don't want to go back to the office? And I said, you don't know. We don't know. There's half of the people that want to go back to the office. They're comfortable. They've been vaccinated. They miss the camaraderie. They want to be, my daughter, she hasn't worked in an office in 2 years, and she's 27 years old, and she wants to learn from somebody. She wants to be held accountable. She's tired of doing her work from the couch in the living room. But her company is not allowing it. And so it's, that would be a reason for her to maybe actively start looking for a new job. But then there's just as many people that are, I'm not going back to the office anytime, any soon. There's no reason to. I've been able to effectively do my job, and there's no reason to go back to the office. But my company is making me come back to the office. So now I'm actively looking for a new job there as well. So there is a lot of networking and a lot of conversation out in the space today. But the key is that networking continues to grow and will continue to grow as the number one way for people to find jobs and learn about new opportunities. Any questions, Jeff?
No, but I still think that 80% through networking is still pretty active, because every once in a while I do hear about a job seeker who found a job that was posted on a job board or posted someplace, and they just happen to luck right in, but it doesn't happen often.
No, it's a needle in the haystack. And it's, one of the things, so one of the best networking, I mean, again, we talk about networking for different reasons, business reasons, but one of the things that I want you all to consider as you're looking at networking and using tools that I'm offering you today to open up your whole vernacular is, let's say that you are actively looking for, there's a job open at Dr. Pepper Krug that you're interested in. And so immediately we want to jump to try to find somebody internally that we know there that can spread our resume. Perfect. Check that box. Do you know anybody that works for the company? If you know anybody, I don't care what division they're in, this is a great time to call that person and just say, hey, I just want you to know, miss working with you, or I'd always wish that we could work together, whatever it might be. But there are some opportunities over at Krug that I see that would be interesting. It might be a fit. Do you have any suggestions for me as far as how I would get my resume in front of the hiring manager quicker than if I just submitted it through your applicant tracking system? So don't start with that call. That should be absolutely your first call. If you got 5 people over there, call all 5 of them, because you're looking for somebody to sponsor you to take you into the job. Now, before you make that phone call, though, what you might do is to learn more about that role in that organization. You might try to find somebody that used to have that job at Krug. So using LinkedIn, people that used to work at Krug but they had that title, you might be able to activate your network and find somebody that you know that you can actively talk to and say, hey, what's it like to work over there? What are the requirements of this job? Am I misreading something? You work there. What am I missing? So you might have some success in reaching somebody from that perspective and learning about the organization. Fast forward, let's say you don't know anybody that works for Krug. You haven't been able to find, or you've got an interview coming up with Krug, and now all you're trying to do is learn as much as you can about that organization. You're going to find information out on the internet. You're going to dial a friend if you've got somebody. But if you don't know anybody, I highly recommend that you try to find somebody that used to work in that organization that you can have a conversation with for 2 or 3 minutes, 5 minutes before you go to an interview, to just try to figure out if you can learn about what's the biggest problem that that organization is trying to solve? What keeps them up at night? What's the culture really like within their organization? What what does the organization do for fun? What's it been like to work over there, or what are you hearing about working over there during the COVID? Any of that kind of information that you can gather is going to be information that you can then return and use in that interview that you got coming up. Now, depending on what level you're at in the organization and depending on the contact that you were able to make, I don't want you to go into that interview in a I know it all mode. But what I do suggest is that if you know that the biggest problem that they're trying to solve is X, Y, and Z, and you've done that in your career before, you're going to want to figure out a way in that interview to highlight that. And not saying that I understand that one of the biggest problems you guys are trying to solve is X, Y, Z, and I'm going to tell you how I did it over at Nabisco. But instead, you're just going to, that's an issue that they're dealing with, and the people you're interviewing with are cognizant of that issue. So when you get the opportunity to tell a story, you might select a story around the subject that they're trying to fill, a problem they're trying to fix, and how you did it when you were over at Nabisco or Kellogg or wherever you might have been. Okay. So just another little bit of tidbit, but people go into networking with blinders on, and there's just so many different reasons to network and to learn about people's story. I'll share a funny, it's not funny, but it's just a coincidence, probably more than anything else. I was at a wedding in Telluride about 4 weeks ago. One of my really good friends got married, and it was a very small, intimate wedding. It was just for family, and then my wife and I were invited as the only outside guests, really. And we on one of the day on Friday, we were taking a hike, and the bride's brother-in-law was on the hike, and I've never met him before, but we're walking together, and it'd be really easy just to talk about your family and what do you do up in Salt Lake City, but I don't go that way. If you know Kurt VandeMotter, if you ever get a chance to get to know me, I want to know the nuts and bolts, and I want to know what makes you up and what makes you tick every day. And that goes a lot further than just family and friends. So I got into pretty deep as far as what this man has done in his career, and that's natural because that's what I do, right? I like to know what people do. So coincidentally, you talk about networking. This guy, he and his company up in Salt Lake City have developed a tool that's helping restaurants build bring incremental clients or customers into their stores, and they're using a texting product that they've been very successful with in the restaurant business. I'm on the board of the YMCA, and we're getting ready for our annual campaign. And I was in a meeting one day, and somebody said, one of the tools we'd love to figure out someday to do, it probably isn't for 5 years, is I wish we had a texting tool. Okay. And it went ching, ching, ching. And I immediately called Steve and said, I think we've got an opportunity to work together. So, that is really informal networking. I don't know what all of the brother-in-laws did within the family. I certainly know what Steve did, and I was able to pay it forward very quickly by making an introduction and potentially using his product to solve a problem that we've got in our fundraising effort. So, that's why I network all the time. I'm an open networker. I take all the appointments of people that want to see me as much as I can. And I think it's just I want you to go deeper into your networking and conversations with people, because you just don't know where the fit and the conversation might go. And I coincidentally come on to ways to introduce people in crazy ways all the time. The other thing is in networking is it really gives you the ability to create some conversation. So as you get to be really good at networking, you'll hear somebody's story and you'll be able to try to help that person pay it forward. Another example, I had the opportunity, I had a client in town a couple of weeks ago. We couldn't play my club because it was closed for a tournament. So I took him down to Trinity Forest, which is a great golf course. If any of you are golfers, down in South Dallas, it's where they played the Byron for a couple of years. It's an amazing golf course, absolutely amazing, regardless of what anybody tells you. I had a caddy, and this young man had been a caddy. He went to San Diego State, played golf there for 4 years, and he's been a caddy for the last 4 years. He's in the process of moving to Arizona, and he wants to go to Arizona State to get his law degree. And so, I mean, again, he was a great caddy. He helped me with my stroke. He read my putts. He cleaned the sand traps. He did all that stuff. But I took the extra time in spending those 4 hours with this young man to learn about where he's at and who his family was and what his passions were and so forth. And I was able to make 3 or 4 phone calls to people that I know at Arizona State University. It would help escalate and help move this young man's application closer to the top. So I do that for people, but I think that is a way that you completely differentiate yourself every day, is not by being the know-it-all or the know everybody all, but to just be an active listener and be able to apply those stories that you've got and those introductions that you can make. Having the ability to call somebody that you're not looking for a job, but just say, hey, I was with somebody the other day and I think you should network with this person. That goes miles and miles and miles, especially when it's a really good introduction, on making sure that your name is at the top of their list. So there's 1,000 ways to network, and I just want you all to keep the blinders off, because it's you can miss too much if you go too fast. So why do people shy away from networking? Pretty obvious. I'm a sales guy. I'm an operations guy. I'm a marketing guy. So I don't have a problem. I mean, my kids will tell you that I don't know a stranger. They laugh at me when I go somewhere and I'll come back and I'll say, well, yeah, I met da-da-da, and they do this and do that. Like, Dad, seriously, in 5 minutes, you learned all that about that person. Yeah, that's what I do. But I don't have that shy gene. If you've got a shy gene, you've got that fear of rejection, then networking could be very painful for you. You might have that misconception that people aren't interested in talking to me, or they don't want to hear my story. That's nonsense. Or you're fearful because talking about yourself is just, it sounds like you're just talking about yourself and nobody wants to hear that story. It requires too much effort. I don't know how. Well, we've talked about a lot of tools today that will help you increase and make that networking more powerful. But if you have any of these fears, if you're not a salesperson, you're a finance person, you're an IT executive, and you don't have that, you've got that shy gene, I encourage you to find a partner, somebody that you can network with, that you can get together with, call it your accountability partner. And I want you to get together with that person on a weekly basis to get you away and as far away from those fears as you can possibly get. People ask me when they're networking, how many times do you call somebody before you don't call them again? And I tell people, when they tell you not to call again, it's that simple. If somebody's got the audacity to say, hey, Kurt, I'm not going to have a job for you. I will never have a job for you. And I will never be able to make an introduction for you. That's when I'll say, thanks. I really appreciate it. Have a blessed day. And if by chance something changes, give me a shout. But I don't have that fear of people slamming down the phone or not picking up my phone call or not returning a call. And so I don't have that fear, but I'm a sales guy. If you have those fears, find somebody in your network that you know that you can attach yourself to that will help you get through these fears that you've got so that you can do active networking that's going to be effective. Any questions?
No, I do want you at some point to go back over your prayer letter again, because a couple of people want to be able to jot everything down. But
got it. So, here's some introvert, extrovert tools. I think that you have to tolerate your anxiety or your discomfort. We have to, as adults, we have to figure out how to do that. And so if this is something that is very difficult for you, I encourage you to get trained. Um, Jeff has got is it the pit stop? Is that what you call it?
The pit crew practice interview team.
Yeah. That's a great place if you've got anxiety over, just how to start some of these conversations. I'm not suggesting that that's the best place, but Jeff would know a resource. If you don't have a sales resource or somebody that can help you get out of these fears, Jeff might have somebody that you could talk to. But the keys are, one is to have a goal. Every sales guy, every salesperson that is really effective, they know their numbers. Okay. And so when I say they know their numbers, they know that it takes 100 phone calls to get 5 appointments to get 2 orders to get 1 final contract. Okay. And so as they go about their day, they go about their week, they're making 100 phone calls every week to hit that goal, because they know when they make 100 phone calls, they'll get 5 appointments, they'll get 2 orders, and so forth. Well, you as a candidate don't know your numbers yet, but I want you to set goals for yourself. So if you think it's reasonable that every day you have 4 networking meetings or calls, and that's a solid number and you can achieve that, then use the number 4. If you think it can be 10, then pick the number 10. But set a goal that says by whatever that number is, by Friday, I'm going to make 20 networking calls, and keep track of your numbers, who you called and what the outcome was. Really important to keep track of this kind of stuff. Now you did that 20 and you realize, gosh, I didn't get any job leads. I didn't get any job offers. I didn't get any, opportunities going to meet anybody. 20 doesn't seem like the number. I better go to 40. Well, now you got to make 10 calls a day. If you get to 10 calls, you get to 40 by Wednesday, then celebrate. Maybe you don't have to make as many calls the next day, but better if you continue to make those phone calls and try to get to 50 or 60 phone calls. Okay. So set a number, keep that goal in mind, and try to celebrate those successes when you get there. If you're having a problem with these calls and you don't know what to say and you're fumbling because you don't know the elevator pitch, you're just not sure how to respond to some of these calls, find a friend, find somebody that you can practice with and role play. I always encourage companies, and I don't care if it's AT&T, a multi-billion-dollar company, or a family-owned business that does 5 million in sales. I always encourage companies to start with a phone call, a 30-minute phone call for their interview. And the reason I encourage companies to do that is because in today's environment, we spend a lot of time on the phone with each other. And so depending on what the role is, whether this role is going to be using the phone to talk to customers, employees, partners, management team, board of directors, getting the opportunity to talk to a person on the phone for 30 minutes gives you a pretty good overview of their ability to communicate with very limited resources. So if you don't feel comfortable using the phone and you don't feel comfortable with those shorter answers, you feel like you're a rambler, then address it, get some coaching, and practice immediately. There's nothing that rambling is the worst. And if you don't think you're a rambler, get your stopwatch out and time yourself the next time somebody says, well, tell me a little bit about yourself. And is that a 4 or 5, or is it a 12-minute conversation? In general, it should be about a minute and a half. But not many people can put that minute and a half introduction together and feel comfortable that they've said enough. A lot of times, Jeff, people that are unemployed also, we get somebody on the phone and it's like, whoa, 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 the phone, it's a job. I haven't talked to anybody in 6 months. And you don't want to be that person, okay? Whether it's a recruiter or a company, you want to be cool, calm, and collective. And the best way to demonstrate that is just by effectively communicating your story and who you are. Start small, if you're not comfortable with this, don't try to do 40, try to do 5 next week. And then just continue to just to celebrate that success. Networking is, we want it to become natural. And I can't tell you how many people, and Jeff's heard these stories too, about people that go to work, they get a great job, they put their head down and they're doing everything they can, they become unemployed and they're like, why didn't I continue the networking for the last year or the last 2 years? Why have I shut off my network? So I don't want you to be that person. I want you to actively network. I want you to reply to all messages that people send you in LinkedIn, even if they're not a job or an opportunity that you're interested. LinkedIn tracks you and they put you in a category that you don't want to be in if you don't reply to messages. I know that's a little off subject, but just a reminder. And we've got about 15 minutes left. Why don't we go through the prayer letter again?
We've got one question before we do that. Somebody says, this is, I guess, asking about being in retained search like you are. What's the best way for a potential candidate to reach out to you to see if there is a fit in your search?
Well, the first thing is that if I'm working on a search and that's in your field, then and you've got the job description and you've looked at that and you've done your homework a little bit, then I think that then it's a quick introduction to just say, I know you're working on this search, and I'd love the opportunity to talk to you a little bit more about the particulars of what you're looking for. I highly recommend you don't send a resume. You want to try to, resumes are deal breakers more often than they are anything else. And the reason is because if you can have a conversation with somebody to learn about what the biggest challenges are, what keeps them up at night, learning those kinds of things and hearing it from a recruiter, then you can tell your story around that is so much more powerful than, hey, Kurt, I understand you got an HR manager job open. I'm an HR manager. Can I send you your resume? Okay. Yeah, you can send me your resume, but I'm on the phone with you. Why don't you tell me a little bit about who you are? Well, I'm an HR person, and I've done payroll for the last 15 years, and I love payroll, and I'm an HR generalist, and I'm a payroll expert. Well, have you ever done this and that? And I can then dig into what this organization's looking for, giving that candidate the opportunity to say, yeah, I've done that, and this is how I did it. So understanding what they're trying to solve is the biggest issue. I get calls all the time, as you can imagine. I get emails, probably 10 a day, just blindly from candidates that have found me on LinkedIn or found me through Forbes or found me somewhere else. And they want to network with me, or they just want to talk to me. They want to get them on my radar. And I do save all those resumes, but I don't have a database that I save resumes in. And the reason is because LinkedIn has a product called LinkedIn Recruiter. And recruiters pay a lot of money to use that product. The key is LinkedIn Recruiter was developed by Korn Ferry. Korn Ferry is being one of the largest recruiting firms in the world. And so often people ask me, well, do you have a centralized database of candidates? And I'm like, no, I used to, but I don't anymore. Why would I do that? I've got LinkedIn. Okay. So if you've got a message to talk to a recruiter about, then certainly, try to get that person on the phone and work with them in any way you possibly can. But if you're just trying to get a conversation going with a recruiter, what I tell people is that, I hate to say it, but most recruiters aren't going to be your best friend. And the reason is because we don't get paid by candidates, we get paid by companies. And as nice as it would be and as easy it would be sometimes to, instead of working with a difficult client, to sit with candidates for 4 or 5 hours a day and just do one-on-one presentations and listening to what they're doing. As much as I'd like to do that, I don't get paid by that. So I've got to work for my clients. And I need that time in front of my desk and talking to candidates, and I can't spend the time all day just talking to unemployed candidates. So I don't know if I've answered your question. I think the key is to try to find a point of relevance. Don't just blanket send your resume in. If they're working on an opportunity that's a fit for the industry or the title or the role that you're looking for, then it's a full court press. But don't send the resume in until you've got a very clear understanding of what they're trying to solve and what's keeping them up at night, so that you can make sure that that resume is spot on.
Great. So here's just sort of a follow-up question that I'm curious. How often, I mean, you just sent me the job rec for the one you're looking for right now, and I've sent it out to all my contacts around the
Yep.
city. How often do you actually publicize what you're looking for? Because on LinkedIn, and you're actually presenting next Tuesday about LinkedIn and showing us from a recruiter standpoint how to use it. My question becomes, how often do you actually publicize that you're looking for something versus you just go search and try to find somebody you're hidden from most people?
Right. So if you were a company and you had just called me, Jeff, and you'd say, Kurt, we're looking at hiring a retained search firm. Tell us a little about what you do and how you do it. The bottom line is that I don't typically post and pray. Okay. The company can do that themselves. Okay. So I highly recommend, if I'm working with an organization or a company that I've not worked with in the past and they never use recruiters, they're not really sure if they want to spend the money to do that, then I give them 3 or 4 ideas of suggestions. Go do this before you use me. So by the time it gets to me, I don't post and pray that I find the right resume or the right candidate. But what I do is I will use thought leaders like Jeff and other industry people that know a lot of people that might be looking. So Jeff has got an active network. He could send that note out to 20 people that know 100 people that each know another 1,000 people. And that's all I'm really trying to do, is to spread the word that I'm actively looking to fill this role. Because that's the masses. That takes me, in my job search for this new role that I'm filling, that activity takes me about 10 minutes, and I check that box. Now I do go actively into the network, and I use the tools and technology that I've got to find people in their job today that are doing the job or doing work similar to what I want them to accomplish within this organization. And I outreach them, and I go to every extent that I can. I'm looking for, here's another one. This is a national job. I don't know if anybody's on the call that fits this bill, but I'm looking for a technical sales manager, executive. They're in the welding business. And so there is a target company out there that this organization would love to have a couple of their people join their team. And I know the name of the company. So I have been sending messages through LinkedIn to about 120 of those people already. In just 5 days, 6 days, I've sent a lot of notes out. And I don't know what's going on with this organization, whether it's just an amazing place to work or they don't read their emails or what, but I've gotten zero. So yesterday what I did is I picked up the phone and I called headquarters, and I just started, I gave him a name and said, I'm looking for the sales guy. He's over in Salt Lake City and his name is ... And the guy goes, well, just a minute. Yeah, here's his number, 823 ... And they give me his phone number. So I'm having to go really hard and deep now. And that's the recruiting that lots of people don't like to do, because it takes time. I mean, for me to build up enough credibility with that guy on the other end of the phone that, for them to give me his phone number, I've got to be pretty good at what I do to say, because I can't say I'm a headhunter. The minute I tell that guy at the switchboard that I'm a headhunter, I'm looking to get a hold of the sales guy in Salt Lake City, if he's got a head on his shoulders, he knows that I want to talk to any salespeople in any part of their organization, because this person can do the job from anywhere. They don't have to be in Florida. They can live anywhere. So I don't know if I'm answering your question, but I use all the tools, and it is Katie bar the door. If I'm looking for somebody and they're in a company, I'll call the company. If I can find somebody that they know, I'll call that person. Hey, this is 911. I'm trying to get a hold of Jack. Do you have a phone number? Do you have an email address? If I send it to you, will you send it to him? I mean, I try to take away all the obstacles, but posting and praying is just maybe a little bit of it. Generally, that's not the way we fill jobs, though.
All right, well, we've only got a few minutes left, so I mean, I definitely want to hear that prayer letter again, sort of step by step, because I'm trying to jot it down myself.
So again, we talked about the prayer letter. It's a letter that's going to go out to your network. You can get those names from people you've worked with, people that you've worked for. Those leads are going to come from all over the place. In that list, I want you to get your email address and their phone numbers, put them into an Excel spreadsheet. And the prayer letter says this. In the subject, it says, great people know great people. Now, you can put any header in there you want. If you want to change it up every month, then come up with another catchphrase that talks about that. But don't use your name, and don't put a resume in there, and don't, I'm getting desperate, we need to talk, something like that. Be very positive and so forth. And then in the body, it says, hey, just a quick update. I'm actively looking for new opportunities. And some of the companies that I'm looking at this month include, and the reason is, and I'm going to stop for a minute here, and you give them those 5 companies. The reason that we put company names in there instead of what we do is because most of you on the phone will intimidate much of your network by trying to tell people what you do. So if you say that you're looking for opportunities at Southwest Airlines, I might say, well, I don't know anybody at Southwest Airlines, but I know somebody over at American Airlines. So that's why we give them companies. So if you know anybody at these companies or companies like these, okay, they see Southwest Airlines, they're going to think aviation, and they may have a contact in another aviation business or industry that would be relevant to your search. So 5 companies. If you know anybody that works for these companies, or you know anybody that works for and in these companies, I'd greatly appreciate an introduction. Feel free to forward this email on to anybody in your network. If there's anything I can do for you or anybody in your network, don't hesitate to call, and I'll be back in touch in 30 days. So it's really just 3 segments. Update what's going on, 1 sentence. I'm continuing to look for a job. Target companies, 5 companies. If you or anybody in your network has contacts with these or other companies like these, I'd love an introduction. Feel free to forward it on to anybody in your network. And then if there's anything I can do for you, I'll be back in touch in 30 days.
There we go. Sorry, that was Kurt's presentation. All right, there were a couple questions in the chat window. I know I put the 30-second, I put the prayer letter in the chat window. So for those people, you can download it out of the chat window. If not, send me an email. I'll be glad to send it to you. Just let me know what you want. Rusty asks, is there a specific day of the week time that you would suggest sending out the prayer letter to maximize how many people open it and read it? I.e. weekends versus business hours. I'd have to ask Kurt his opinion here. I knew somebody who did this, and they would send it out every Sunday morning, 11, 12 o'clock or something like that. It'd be a Sunday morning thing. And, the first time, not a lot, but the second or third or fourth time the email went out, this person was getting phone calls. They said within a half hour, an hour of getting the thing, because people would happen to they'd see it on their phone or something. Because it's a short message. You're not sending a whole lot. You're not sending out a resume. You're not sending out a bio. Here's just a short little message reminding people that you're out looking for a job. I wouldn't do it on Mondays, just because Mondays people getting back to work. I've always heard Terry Sullivan on BuzzPro talks about the best time to post to get to executives is on Saturday mornings, because during the week they're busy, but Saturday mornings they're catching up on what they've done during the week. So that may just be an option for you. But I have a feeling that any time that you can, whatever's best, I would just not do it. Don't do it, Mondays, and probably Mondays and Fridays, I would avoid doing it. And in the letter that I attached, I made a couple additions that I have in green. I recommend you send 2 of them out. One to friends, family, and maybe church members, and the second one to your professional contacts, because you can word it a little bit differently, on how, you can add a little bit more for friends and family, or, whatever. So I recommend you send out 2 different prayer letters, essentially the same information, but you never know. So I hope, Rusty, I answered your question there. Jane asked a question. I just applied for a job at a very small startup. Only a handful of employees came up on LinkedIn. One of them was a data scientist, which is an adjacent role to what I'm applied to. I'm wondering how to approach them in a LinkedIn connection invitation. It's probably small enough where everybody knows everybody at that company. I would just reach out to the person, just go, I'd love to find out more about your company. I'd love to find out more about what it is you do. Would you have 15 minutes that we could chat? And, you're not asking for a job. You want to ask for advice and information. I'm looking for advice and information. And what usually happens is they'll ask about you a little bit, and they'll go, oh, we have a role here. Even towards after you've built that rapport, after 10 or 15 minutes, you can go and say, I really want to, I said we'd only take up 15 minutes of your time. We're about done. I want to be mindful of your time. I happen to notice that there is another job open there with this job title. Would you happen to know who the hiring manager is? Or could you connect me? Or would you, what's the best process you think you'd be able to do? You can't, there's nothing, you don't ask for the job during the initial email, the message you send out. You're just looking for advice and information. And then you just let them go and you see what happens there. Shouldn't you tell them I've already applied? No. Unless they're the hiring manager, or unless they say, well, have you already applied for the job? No, you don't have to tell them, because what if they go and say, there's a job right now, it sounds like it'd be perfect for you. Do you know who the hiring manager is? If I sent you my resume, could you hand deliver it to that person? Oh, thank you, helpful. Oh yeah, I've already applied. The only person who wants to know that is the HR department. Okay, but if you can get in through the back door, that's much better than trying to say, well, I've already applied, because you never know if they're using an ATS system or whatever it is you're using. See if you can get somebody to help you. That's always going to be the best thing. And if they ask you if you've applied, oh yeah, I applied last Thursday for that position, but I would love an opportunity if you could get my resume to the hiring manager, hand deliver it, or get it to them. It would really be appreciated. So just go for it. It's hard to do. It's hard to just say go, go, go. But I mean, that's the whole point of this, of the whole networking thing, is getting out there and just sort of saying things to everybody. All right, I know we're a little bit past the top of the hour. Let me share a couple more slides and we will get out of here. Career DFW, Career USA, we're putting on training 4 days a week. Please join us. Oops, let's see here. Tomorrow morning, Elizabeth Lyons will be with us. She's a professional recruiter. You can look her up on LinkedIn, very interesting profile. She's going to talk about the overall job seeking market and the job hunt. So she's going to pull her crystal ball out and tell us what she foresees. She's been an HR leader for many years. She's hired tons of people. She's done the initial recruiting, bringing people in for executives. So join us tomorrow. It should be a very interesting presentation. We are meeting in person. So those of you who live in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, please come join us in person. Otherwise, we will be on Zoom or Facebook Live. Next Tuesday, Terry Sullivan will be with us from BuzzPro to talk about how to create a LinkedIn profile. It tells your key contacts who you are, what you do, and how you can help. This is for our LinkedIn Tuesday presentation at 1 p.m. Central. The event will not be recorded. So if you want to see Terry Sullivan next Monday, please, please, please join us in person. Next Wednesday, Jack Bick will be with us to talk about clarity when you need it most. For Interviewing Wednesdays, he'll be our last speaker that we've got for Interviewing Wednesdays, and then we'll get back to the 13-part workshop. And in fact, the interview group is going to start meeting in person starting in March, the first and third Wednesdays of the month. So they're going to start doing in-person interviews and interview sessions in March. Next Thursday, being the third Thursday of the month, we're going to talk about resumes, effective resumes. Come join us we have a different speaker who'll talk about, who will share their thoughts. If you'd like to join the Career DFW or Career USA LinkedIn groups, we have both of them. The Career DFW group has over 14,500 members. You do not need to live in the Dallas-Fort Worth area to join that group. You can join either or both groups. It's just here to expand your connections and how you can connect with everybody else out there. This session has been recorded. It will be on the Career DFW Facebook page and the Career USA YouTube channel. On the Career USA YouTube channel, click on playlist, and then down where you see networking, if you want to see this presentation, it'll be up in a couple hours. It'll take YouTube a couple hours to get it uploaded. Just click on View Full Playlist, and then up will come a list of all the different dates and topics and titles, and you can go back, scroll down, and watch any of them at your convenience. If you're not receiving emails about our workshops, please join the Career USA mailing list. Just send an email to Career USA, the + subscribe at groups.io. You'll never be spammed, but what you will get is the email of the day. You get an email with the topic of the day, the title of the day, and most importantly, the Zoom link of the day. That way you can just open up the email and join us. Career DFW, we're a 501c3 nonprofit organization. All of our speakers are volunteers. I'm a volunteer. Everything I've done over the last 14 years has just been to help you land your next great opportunity. So thank you for joining us today, everybody. Have a great Thursday, and hopefully we'll see you tomorrow morning. If not, maybe one day next week.